Welcome to episode 6 of Video Games Like Blade Runner. When I was growing up, perhaps like many of you, I used to buy those PlayStation magazines that came with a free demo disc, because it was cheaper than buying actual games, and it felt like you were getting a bunch of fun experiences all in one. One of the demos on a particular disc was called the Net Rose, a developmental kit for the PlayStation. It was similar in appearance, only sporting a black paint job. It was a system marketed towards hobbyist developers, and some of their projects found their way onto game demos. One such game was a project called Psychon. It was a game that me and my friend played for what felt like hours. Though this wasn't a twin-stick shooter, as the sticks in question had yet to come into existence, it definitely had the feeling of that kind of game. And the reason I'm bringing it up is because of the first game in our list. The Ascent. When you're talking about Blade Runner-esque games and twin-stick shooters, one on top of the list would probably be The Ascent. Released in 2021 by Neon Giant, it was their first game, developed by just 12 people, taking place in Velez, a futuristic city with a massive tower structure owned by a mega corporation, of course. Called the Ascent Group, you were one of their indentured grunts. But when the group suddenly vanishes for no reason, the city turns into chaos with factions all vying for control in the resulting power vacuum. The world is, of course, suitably gritty, rainy, and neon-y, with areas packed with people living their lives in this dystopian cocoon. The combat is fast-paced and explosive, and as you progress higher up in the megastructure, you'll encounter new enemies and environments. This game is much more weighted on the action side in favour of story, but given the game's setting, the action very much is the story of this world. Obviously, you can make parallels of replicants and indentured servitude, especially when it comes to military application, but the Ascent is a beautifully actualized cyberpunk world, and has clearly drawn references from Blade Runner, which is almost impossible to not do when you're talking about cyberpunk. Our next game is Dex. Officially released in 2015 after a successful Kickstarter fund, Dex is a small studio side-scrolling game. I've included small indie games on these lists before, and it is always a bit more of a challenge to be honest, but at the same time, it really makes me realise how many games there are out there that people, individuals, pour their heart into and create literal worlds filled with life that don't even necessarily get the recognition or coverage their work deserves. This was made especially apparent upon researching this game and finding out that the lead designer, Jan Jurkowski, would pass away at the age of 26. In the game, you play as a lady called, guess who? Dex, who lives in a place called Harbour Prime, which is of course owned by... you get the idea. Across the game, you'll be able to traverse its two-dimensional environment and melee, shoot, hack, and platform your way through, becoming a part of the Resistance. There are also dialogue trees, story choices, and a range of side quests to be had. The art style from the game does stand out as it's quite different in both still frames and gameplay. It almost has a digital painting aesthetic to it, and this only adds to its uniqueness as a smaller title. The streets on Harbour Prime have a satisfying buzz to them in a kind of dystopian way, with NPCs walking by you, in the foreground crowds in front of you, and a whole host of detailed sci-fi noir environments. There is something I find really commendable about all the detail in this game. During the shooting of the first Blade Runner movie, Ridley Scott was notoriously very particular about the sets and their details, and obviously on a smaller scale, this seems to be something that's observed in this game. Going back to my point at the beginning, it very much seems like a labour of love, and it would be nice if more people were able to get their eyes on it. The birth of cyberpunk is often attributed to two things. The first being Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, which would of course go on to be adapted into Blade Runner, and the second being William Gibson's Neuromancer, both becoming the foundation of modern cyberpunk. VirtuaVerse is a point-and-click game set in a world reminiscent of Neuromancer. Now, I hear you, but seeing as I don't have a video games like Neuromancer series, I can put this here instead, but I think you'll come to the same conclusions I did. Displayed in a pixel art style, VirtuaVerse sees you taking control of Nathan, a hacker and user of the world's augmented virtual reality technology. You can stick a bit of Ready Player One in here too, I guess. Your girlfriend goes missing, and in your bid to find her you get stuck in a web that's part of a larger, world-threatening problem, involving making users of the VR technology permanently users of the product, never again experiencing the world outside them. This game features all the usual trimmings of a point-and-click game, collecting, talking, puzzles, and all that goodness, but of course we're here to talk about its aesthetic and theme. The look and soundtrack to this game mirror the 80s themed synthwave vibe movement that's become so prominent in recent years, with lots of purples and retro wave strings. It's another one to add to our list. Satellite Rain. Back in episode 3 I covered the Syndicate series and dropped a hint about the project this would later become, but I also covered the strange reboot of the series, which completely changed the genre of the game. The programmer for the original Syndicate Wars in 1996, Mike Diskett, had commented on this, saying he had taken it upon himself to deliver what fans really wanted. So in 2015 we got Satellite Rain, an RTS game acting as a spiritual successor to the original Syndicate series, with the original game's composer even coming to the project and helping deliver what the game was. The story is also similar enough to the old guard, being set in a city where a corporation, Dracogenics, produces a technology used by people and have full control of the police force and the inner workings of the city. The player takes the role of someone working for a rival corporation, looking to take down Dracogenics, in a setting and story that sounds like it modified just enough from the original Syndicate series to still explore the same sentiments and gameplay. This seems like a feel-good story, with the original creator being able to take the old fanbase and make something in that same vein once more. Signalis. In what seems to be the unique combination of Resident Evil and Blade Runner, Signalis is described as a classic survival horror experience set in a dystopian future where humanity has uncovered a dark secret. Unravel a cosmic mystery, escape terrifying creatures, and scavenge an off-world government facility as Elster, a technician replica, searching for her lost dreams. You awaken as a replica, an android created with human neural imprints, essentially a machine with a soul. Similar to that of a replicant, or the sleeper units from Citizen Sleeper from the last episode. The replica units are used for, as you can imagine, warfare and labour. Your unit, known as Elster, sets about searching for their partner, Ariane. A game developed by a team of 2. It marries visuals of anime-style characters with the uncanniness of 90s video game graphics, with the 3-dimensional camera cuts included. Despite its sci-fi setting, its combat and tone have Resident Evil all over it. Fixed angle camera, optional tank controls, resource management, and save rooms. You'll encounter enemies in the game that are corrupted replicas, almost like the android equivalent to a zombie. They are the functional rotten corpses of these humanoid androids. If you couldn't tell already, this is much more along the horror side of things. On Elster's journey searching for her partner, she also experiences memories that aren't hers. Yes, it's our old friend, body horror, joined by our old friend, existential dread of being a machine with a consciousness. Of course, trying to go without spoiling any of the game's 4 multiple endings, this is a game about emotions deemed to be human being expressed by a being who isn't. And in the end, what could be more Blade Runner than that? So that's it for episode 6. When making this video, I was quite conscious of its length. It's only about 10 minutes or so, probably one of the shortest ones so far. And I was thinking, is that bad? Am I phoning this in? Am I saying enough about the games? I suppose part of the truth is, this series is in its twilight. It's not at its end by any means, but it is probably closer to the end than it is to the beginning. Consulting the list I made when I first started the series, this is the last episode I actually wrote a script for, quite a while ago now. But on that list, I do have a list of games for the next episode. So don't worry, this isn't going anywhere just yet. but I do have a whole bunch of video ideas that I've begun working on, started writing, and some that are merely a thought in my brain. On the contrary, the next video I'm working on is shaping up to be the longest one I've done on this channel so far, but I hope you'll be there to join me for them. But for now, thanks for still watching. When making this video, I was quite conscious of its length. Was it long enough? I hope no one's listening to this out of context.